Hi everyone, so today we're going to be making this beautiful short boubou dress. I have my fabric on fold, both the front and the back, and what I use to measure my fold is the measurement from the nape of my neck to where I want my sleeve to end, and for me this is about 21 inches. So I'm going to be marking my starting line, which is also going to serve as my shoulder line. And from my shoulder line, I'm going to be marking the length of my dress plus my hemming allowance, which makes it a total of 39 inches. So I am marking this now, and I'm going to be connecting my point to make a straight line as well at the bottom part. So I decided to make use of 20.5 inch for the measurement from the nape of my neck to my sleeve length. So I marked 20.5 inch from the folded end there, and on that 20.5 inch mark I came down by 1 inch, which is going to serve as my shoulder slope. Then I marked my neck width for 3 inches, back neck depth for 1 inch, front neck depth for 3 inches, and I'm going to be connecting my necklines with my free hand. You can also make use of your cuff. Then I'll be connecting my 3 inches neck width to the 20.5 inch that I marked earlier to form my shoulder slope. Then I'm coming up by 0.5 inch. This will serve as my seam allowance to join my shoulders together. Now, in order to get my sleeve opening, I marked 10 inches from my shoulder slope line, and I marked this point into a straight line. This line will also serve as my bust line. Then from my shoulder line, I came down by 25 inches, which is my hip line. I marked the point and I connected it with a straight line with my ruler. Now I'm going to be dividing my hip by 4. Then I'll be adding ease. You can add an ease of between 3 inches to 5 inches to quarter of your hip measurement. So I decided to add 3 inches to quarter of my hip measurement, and then I added 1 inch for seam allowance. Now I'll be marking the same thing on my hip line as well as my hem line as well. So I'll be connecting these 3 points together to form a straight line. Remember, we have 20.5 inch on the shoulder line. I'll be coming down by that same 20.5 inch on my bust line. Then I'll be coming in by half of an inch, and now I'll be connecting that point back to my shoulder line just like this. And then we don't want to have any sharp corners on our dress, so I'm going to be making a slight curve there with my curved rule. So we are basically done with the drafting, so I'll be cutting out my back piece first. Now I removed the back from the front, and I'll be cutting out my front neckline, and also there is going to be an opening after the front neckline. So from that point there, I came down by 4 inches to mark the opening point, and then I will be marking 0.25 at that point there, and I'll be connecting it to that 4 inches mark that I made earlier. I hope you see it. So I'm just forming a very tiny V, and I'll be cutting this out. To cut the pocket, I place my fabric on fold. For the width I have 10 inches, and for the length I have 12 inches. My pocket was quite large, so if you don't want it to be that big, I suggest you reduce the measurements. So I'm going to be cutting this into 2 now. I also have my organza strip here, you can use between 5 to 6 inches for the width, and the length is 60 inches. I cut 2 strips of it. I went ahead to press down all of my seam allowance for my pocket. For the top part, I have 1.5 inch for my folding. I first folded in 0.25, then I folded in the remaining 1.25. Then all around the pocket, I folded in 0.5 and I pressed it down with my pressing iron. I also did the same thing to the second pocket. For my organza strip, I closed the end just like you see, and I'm going to be trimming out the rough edge right there. Then I also did the same thing to the other end of the strip. I stitched it down and I trimmed off the rough edge. Then I'm going to be turning it out and giving it a good press, just like you see in the video. Please note that you need to press your organza with very low heat because it has the tendency to burn. I also did the same thing to the second strip of organza. I stitched it down at both ends and then I turned it out and gave it a good press. So this will make it easier for me when I'm joining it to the pocket. Now I've gone ahead to overlock my organza strip so that it becomes one piece and it makes it easier to work with. I folded my front piece into two and made a crease with my pressing iron so I'll be able to get the center line. Then from the shoulder line, I marked 19 inches and this line will be the line where I will be placing my pockets. Now the crease I made is so I get the center of my front piece and I'm able to place my pockets properly. So I made a straight line on the 19 inches point and I'm trying to figure out the spacing between my pockets. Remember, I have the crease line as my guide. So from the crease line, I decided to mark 2.5 inch from the crease line to where I'll be starting my pocket. Remember, I'm still going to be adding my organza fabric, so I don't want the pocket to be too close. And now I am marking 2.5 inch from the crease line on both sides. So this will serve as a guide for me. I'm going to be making a straight line. So this is the line I'm going to be following when placing my pockets. It just makes things easier. Before fixing my pocket, I need to stitch down the top part first. So I'm going to be doing that right away and I'll show you what it looks like both on the wrong side and on the right side. Now I'm going to be placing my pockets following the guidelines that I made earlier on my front piece, and I'm going to be pinning it down, but I won't be pinning down on the sides because I will need to sew down the sides. I'll just be pinning down at the center. After securing with a few pins, this is how I'm going to be placing my organza fabric underneath my pocket, and I'll be stitching as close to the edge as possible. But one thing I like to do is I divided my organza into two to find the midpoint. I'm also going to be trying to find the midpoint of my pocket, which is somewhere around there. Then I'll be pinning these 2 points together. This is just to ensure that the pleats are uniform on both sides and that I don't run out of organza after pleating one side, if you get what I'm trying to say. So now I know I have equal amount of organza on both sides. So now I'll be taking my time pleating the organza underneath my pocket as I stitch, and also making sure that I stitch as close to the edge of my pocket as I possibly can. So you really need to take your time while doing this, making sure that the organza is secured underneath my pocket and stitching very close to the edge as well. fixing the first pocket, I'm going to be doing the exact same thing, fix the second pocket, following my guidelines that I marked previously, and this is what we have afterwards. Now I'm going to be cutting a facing for the opening we made on the front neckline earlier. So I'll just be placing this piece of fabric on fold right underneath my neckline, making sure it aligns properly with my neckline. Then I'll be cutting out exactly what I have on my neckline. Remember, it's not a full facing, I just needed to turn that small opening that I made earlier on my neckline. So this is what I have, and I'm going to be reducing the length and the width as well. I'll be fusing this facing with a light interfacing, and I'm also going to be overlocking the edge so it doesn't fray. Now I'm going to be placing this facing right sides facing each other over my front piece in order to turn that opening on my neckline. Now I'm going to be turning it with about 0.5 inch, and I'm going to be notching the corners, especially that V part. Then afterwards I'll be top stitching on my facing, and after doing that, this is what I have. Please make sure that you notch that V part properly before you top stitch so that it comes out like this. Then I ironed it properly and I applied hemming gum to fuse it to my front piece. I also went ahead to overlock my shoulder line at the front. I did the same thing to the back, and I will be folding my sleeve opening. I'll be double folding it in order to hem it. This is because of the ruching that I'm going to be having on my shoulder, so I am hemming it singly. So after hemming, I did the same thing to the back sleeve opening as well. Now I'm going to be placing the back over the front, right sides facing each other. I'm going to be joining both at the shoulder with half of an inch. After joining, this is what I have. Now I'm going to be opening up my seam allowance just like you see me doing. I'm trying to determine the length of my ruching, and I marked 9 inches for this. So from that 9 inches point, I am going to be sewing down my seam allowance, and I will show you what it looks like. So after sewing it down, this is what I have, but I did not close it at the end. Now I cut my ropes. Make sure your rope is tinier than the 0.5 inch allowance that you left for your seam, and I'm going to be inserting it through this channel that I made. After inserting with the aid of my small safety pin, I made sure I didn't insert it all the way. I still had a little bit left over from my rope. So I also did the same thing to the other channel. After I was done inserting it through the channels, I made sure that I top stitched on my 9 inches that I marked earlier in order to secure the ropes inside the channel. Then I cut off the excess that I have there. And then I repeated the same thing on the other shoulder as well. Now I'm going to be measuring what I have around my neckline, and when I measured, I had 18 inches around my neckline, and this is what I'm going to be using to cut my bishop collar. So I have my fabric on fold. What I have on fold is 18 inches divided by 2. Then I added extra allowance for turning. Then for the height of my collar, I am marking 1.25 inch from that starting line there, and I'm going to be making it into a straight line. Then I am marking my 9 inches and half of an inch for seam allowance to turn it, and that makes it a total of 9.5 inch on fold. Now I'm going to be marking 4.5 inches on this collar, and at this other hand I'm going to be coming up by 0.25 inch. Now I'm going to be connecting this 0.25 mark to my 4.5 inch just to form a very slight curve at the end of this collar. This is totally optional. You can just decide to cut your collar straight, but I like to do this. Now I'm going to be adding 0.5 inch round my collar. This will serve as the seam allowance to turn it, because I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces of it. Now I'm going to be cutting this out, and I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces of it like I said. After cutting, I made sure to notch the center point for both pieces, and then I'll go ahead and add interfacing to the wrong side of both pieces. I also made sure that I indicated the upper part so I don't get confused. So I'm going to be placing both pieces together, right sides facing each other, and I'm going to be making sure that I match the notched part, which is the center point. Then from this end I'm going to be stitching down with 0.5 inch to the other hand, and after doing that, this is what I have. Now I'm going to be trimming off this excess because we don't need the bulk in our collar, making sure I trim down that edge properly so that it turns out well when I turn it over to the right side. I also made sure I folded in my 0.5 inch, which is my stitching allowance, at the bottom part with my pressing iron, and after doing that, this is what I have. Now I'm going to be fixing this collar on the neckline of my boubou, starting at one end. So I'm going to be placing it right sides facing each other, making sure that the edges match. You can use your pins if you want. I'm just going to be sewing, following the crease that I made with my iron, and after stitching the first layer, this is what I have. Now I'm going to be using the second layer to cover up the first stitch that I made, if this makes sense, so that it looks very clean both on the inside and on the outside. You can make use of your pins at this point in order to secure it before sewing it down. So I did this all the way around the neckline. After stitching it down, this is what my neckline looks like right now. It looks very clean and beautiful. Now I went ahead to join the sides of my boubou using my seam allowance, and for the bottom part I overlocked it. Then I went ahead to my pressing iron and I pressed down my sewing allowance first before stitching it down. This makes it easier for me, especially when I'm stitching down the hem of my dresses. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've gotten any value from this video, please hit on the like button and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy watching sewing tutorials. Thank you so much. Till I see you next time. Bye.